Hey everyone. So today we are going to transition to talking about tsunamis. So the past few last lessons we've been talking about earthquakes. Today we're going to talk about tsunamis. And next class we're going to start talking about volcanoes. Before we move on to tsunamis, the warm-up question is going to ask you, what is one thing you have learned about earthquakes? So before we move on just to tsunamis, we are going to just quickly review what exactly we've learned over the past couple classes. So for this warm-up question, please tell me something that you did not know before our earthquake lessons. And because it's something that's coming from one of the past few lessons, you're going to use your own thoughts and words and avoid using Google. Our plan for today, or the agenda rather, was first we did the warm-up. After that, we did a little bit of earthquake recap. That was part of the warm-up. So I put the things that you learned onto a KQL chart, the same KQL chart that your class has been working on for the past couple weeks. This one is from 7th period, so not every period will look like this, but this KQL chart will be on Google Classroom so that you can check it out. And then after that, we learned a little bit about the 1964 Alaska tsunami. You might recognize that something else happened in Alaska in 1964, and you might wonder if they're connected. And that was a strong hint, but yeah. And then after that, in some classes, we watched the tsunami demonstration, but then that was sort of the end of class. And so not every class is getting through all of these things. So just so that you're aware, if something is not on Google Classroom for you to do, that's because your class did not get there. Right. So today's goals, by the end of this lesson, whenever the end of that lesson may be, you will be able to use a model to explain the causes and effects of tsunamis. And the focus question today is, what causes a tsunami? What are the effects of a tsunami? And how can we mitigate those effects? Again, mitigate means reduce. Awesome. So like I said, for the warm-up, the earthquake recap, I took the things that you told me you learned about earthquakes, and I put them on that KQL chart. And then after that, we started talking about the 1964 Alaska tsunami. So when we talk about natural hazards, there are some really important ideas that come up. One is that communicating information is vital. So during an active natural disaster, when a natural disaster is happening right now, it's really important that people are able to communicate what they've learned, either with people who have not been affected yet, or like with scientists who are trying to understand these natural disasters for the future, And another important idea that we've already studied when we talked about earthquakes was that examining past events helps us prepare for the future. So it's really important that we do look to the past in order to understand the future. Both of those ideas are going to be very important when we talk about the 1964 Alaska tsunami. So when we were studying earthquakes, we watched a video about the 1964 earthquake in Alaska. Back then, information and communication technology was very different. So now we have the internet, and we have the internet and satellites, and it's very, very easy to communicate with other people. We can do it digitally without any cords or anything. Back in 1964, that was not the case. In order to communicate with someone, you had to have a cable or a line between your phone and the other person's phone. And there were like lots and lots of cables. But unfortunately, during the 1964 Alaska earthquake, when those two tectonic plates suddenly went jutted up or jutted down, some of those cables got clipped or snipped or cut in half and severed. And so those severed lines then crippled telephone communication. And the lines that were still intact, the lines that were still functioning, quickly became clogged because many people were trying to use them to talk to other people from other parts of Alaska or around the world, telling them about this earthquake. And so because those telephone lines became clogged, there wasn't really a good way to share important information about the earthquake or what was coming after the earthquake. So it's actually really cool because in that time, normal citizens like you and me, who were amateur radio operators, so these just like regular old people who were big fans of using small radios, personal radios, and doing their own broadcasts, they actually facilitated a lot of the communication across Alaska and to other parts of the world. So all of these regular citizens were suddenly using their radios for a very important purpose, which was telling everyone else about what happened or what was going to happen soon. So if you want to listen, we actually have audio recordings of those calls, and so you can actually listen to them if you click on this YouTube video on the top right. In class we only listen to some parts of them, but they are pretty interesting if you want to take a look at this, this like first-hand source. Primary source is the word. All right, and but after listening to that YouTube video, we then watched the rest of this earthquake video that we started last class. So this video, the first half is about the Great Alaska Earthquake. The second half is about the Great Alaska Tsunami. So the tsunami was caused by the earthquake, or rather, well, you'll see in the video. It's slightly more complicated than that, but the tsunami was an end result of the earthquake. After you watch that video, there will be questions on Google Classroom for you to answer. So it'll be under week 28. It's called Lesson 48, Tsunami Video Reflection. There are 4 questions. The first question is, what was the cause of the 1964 tsunami? The second question is, how did scientists use past data in order to understand future tsunamis? The third one is, how have the 1964 earthquake and tsunami impacted science? So we kind of know how the earthquake impacted science, but how did the tsunami impact science? And number 4, according to the video, how do scientists use data to study/monitor earthquakes and tsunamis? So those are the 4 questions that you should try to answer as you work on this video, as you watch this video. And the rest of the lesson sort of depended on what class you're in, but the rest of the lesson you can do, or rather you can see on your own. Yes. So I will end this video here. And for the rest of the lesson, if it's applicable to your class, you can just see it on my Google Slides when I post those. But yeah, so otherwise, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in class next time.